I'm 73 years old, and I need to tell you something that most people don't want to hear. Your body doesn't warn you the way you think it will. We like to believe that when something is wrong, it will be obvious. Pain, drama, a clear signal that says, "Stop, something is happening." That's the story we tell ourselves to feel safe. That isn't how it works. A few months ago, I experienced my first real heart scare at 73. Not a heart attack. Not the kind of emergency you see in movies. Just a quiet, unsettling moment that changed how I see everything. And what scares me most isn't what happened to my heart. It's what I realized afterward. Before that day, I thought I understood aging. I thought I knew my limits. I told myself, I've made it this far. I'm careful. I listened to my body. I believed experience made me immune to surprises. I was wrong. It happened on an ordinary morning. No stress, no argument, no heavy exertion. I was standing in my kitchen, waiting for the kettle to boil, when I felt something I can only describe as wrong. Not pain, not pressure, just a strange flutter, like my heart forgot its rhythm for a moment and had to remember how to beat again. I stood there, hand on the counter, waiting for it to pass. And it did. A few seconds later, everything felt normal again. I almost ignored it. That's the dangerous part. When you're young, you panic too easily. When you're older, you learn to brush things off. You tell yourself you felt worse. You tell yourself it's nothing. You tell yourself you don't want to make a fuss. So I went on with my day. But something stayed with me. A quiet unease. A voice I didn't want to listen to. By evening, I realized I couldn't stop thinking about it. And that's when the fear crept in. Not fear of dying. Fear of how unprepared I was. The next day, I went to the doctor. Tests, monitors, long silences while someone stared at a screen you can't see. Eventually, the doctor looked at me and said, "You're lucky you came in." Lucky. That word again. He explained that my heart had shown signs of irregular rhythm. Not catastrophic. Not urgent enough for sirens. But serious enough that ignoring it would have been a mistake. As I sat there listening, I felt something shift inside me. Not panic. Clarity. Because for the first time since my earlier health scares decades ago, I understood something deeply and personally. At 73, there is no such thing as later. We spend our lives thinking danger announces itself loudly, that the big moments come with flashing lights and clear deadlines. But aging teaches you something cruel. The most important changes happen quietly. No one tells you this part. They talk about retirement. They talk about slowing down. They talk about aches and medications. What they don't tell you is how suddenly your sense of permanence disappears. One moment you're planning next year. The next moment, you're aware that your body is negotiating time on your behalf. That heart scare forced me to ask questions I had been avoiding. What am I still postponing? What am I still tolerating that drains me? Who am I assuming will always be there? Because here's the truth I don't hear enough people say. Even when you've lived a long life, it's shockingly easy to act like you still have unlimited time. I caught myself doing it. Thinking in months. Thinking in after this. Thinking in someday. That scare stripped those illusions away. I started noticing things differently. How quickly days pass. How conversations end too soon. How often I rush moments that deserve my full attention. I thought I was already living slowly. I wasn't. I was still distracted, still delaying, still assuming tomorrow was guaranteed because yesterday had been. After that appointment, I went home and sat alone in my living room. No television, no phone, just silence. And in that silence, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Urgency without panic. I thought about the calls I put off because I didn't feel like talking. The walks I skipped because I could do them tomorrow. The projects I kept meaning to start once I felt more ready. I realized something uncomfortable. Even at 73, I was still living as if my life hadn't fully begun yet. That realization hit harder than the medical news, because the heart scare wasn't the real warning. The real warning was how easily I could have continued exactly as I was. I've known people who didn't get that warning. Friends who felt fine one week and were gone the next. Men who assumed their strength would carry them through. Women who ignored quiet signs because they didn't want to be a burden. At their funerals, no one talks about how productive they were. They talk about moments, laughter, missed chances, love that felt unfinished. That's when regret shows up. Not loud, not dramatic, just heavy. After my scare, I made changes, not extreme ones, honest ones. I stopped rushing conversations. I started answering calls instead of letting them go to voicemail. I began structuring my days around energy, not obligation. Most importantly, I stopped lying to myself about time. I stopped saying soon. Soon is a dangerous word. Soon is how years disappear. You don't need a heart scare to understand this, but most people won't understand it until something forces them to. So let me ask you a question I had to ask myself. If your body reminded you tomorrow that nothing is guaranteed, what would you regret not doing today? Who would you wish you had spoken to? What would suddenly feel unimportant? When your health feels stable, it's easy to believe you're in control. That illusion is comforting. It's also false. We don't control time. We respond to it. My heart scare didn't make me afraid of dying. It made me afraid of living on autopilot. Because surviving isn't the same as living. I'm more careful now. Not just with my health, but with my attention. I protect my energy. I guard my time. I say no without guilt and yes without delay. And strangely enough, that has made life feel fuller, not smaller. I laugh more. I listen better. I feel less rushed, even though time feels more precious than ever. That's the paradox of aging no one explains. When you finally understand time is limited, life expands. If I could speak to my younger self, or even my 60-year-old self, I wouldn't lecture him. I'd just say this. Pay attention to the quiet signals in your body, in your relationships, in your spirit. Don't wait for a crisis to start living intentionally, because sometimes the warning comes softly, and sometimes it doesn't come at all. I'm 73 years old. My heart is stable. My health is managed. But my perspective has changed forever. Every morning now feels deliberate. Every choice feels weighted. Not in a fearful way, in a meaningful one. I don't know how much time I have left. None of us do. But I know this. I don't want to waste another day assuming tomorrow will fix what today requires. If this message resonates with you, don't ignore it. Share it. Talk about it. act on it. Because the scariest heart scare isn't the one that lands you in a doctor's office. It's the one that never happens, while life quietly passes you by. The clock is always ticking. The question is whether you're listening.